Thank you for joining me for this month's Virtual Curators Tour. I'm Jenna Gilly, Associate Curator of Exhibitions at the Fort Wayne Museum of Art, and I'll be your tour guide. Today we will be exploring Rowland Ricketts' Invisible Forces, curated by Sachi Rizzo, Curator of Prints and Drawings. This exhibition is supported by the Edward D. and Ione Auer Foundation. To begin our tour, I would like to share a little bit about the artist. Rowland Ricketts became aware of the causal relationship between his art making and the environment while living in a 140-year-old farmhouse. All the gray water, including his darkroom chemicals, went down the drain directly into a nearby stream. This led to a desire to incorporate sustainable practices in his art, working with environmentally conscious farmers and making natural dye from composted indigo leaves. Along with his wife and collaborator Chinami, who is skilled in ikat weaving, the artists create projects large and small using materials grown on their farm in Bloomington, Indiana. On this exhibition, the artist states, "I am an indigo farmer and dyer trained in my craft as an apprentice in Japan. The blues I create all start with a handful of seeds, yet things like the soil in which the plants were grown, annual rainfall, and other weather patterns, and the quality of the bacterial environments in the composting and vatting processes that lead to dyed cloth are all invisible forces shaping the final color. These forces are all undeniably present in indigo's unique materiality, despite their invisibility in the final work. For the past 15 years, I have created large-scale installations of dyed cloth, plant material, and sound that give voice to these invisible forces." The star of this exhibition is undoubtedly Zurashi, or slipped in English, the installation in the center of the room. It was commissioned by the Seattle Art Museum as the entrance to their 2023 exhibition, Ikat, A World of Compelling Cloth, which brought together historical and contemporary ikat weavings from cultures around the world. In ikat, yarns are measured and selectively bound before dyeing to create patterns which reveal themselves when stretched and slipped on a loom and woven into cloth. This installation translates the historical ikat technique into an immersive three-dimensional work that viewers can walk through. Inspired by how ikat yarns are often draped to dry in a weaving studio, the installation consists of more than 1.2 million yards of naturally colored cotton yarn that were resisted, dyed, and slipped by hand to create a precise pattern. Separate video and sound components bring the ikat process into the installation by presenting slow, close-up shots of the hands making the work and sounds from every stage of production into the museum space. This work was a collaboration with Ricketts' wife Chinami, combining his experience creating large-scale installations with her knowledge as a practicing ikat weaver. Zurashi woven, displayed next to the installation, is an example of what the hanging threads of yarn would look like if woven. The chevron design in the hanging installation forms the warp or vertical threads of an unfinished weaving. This same pattern was threaded onto a loom, and other ombre strands, the weft, were then woven between and jammed tightly to form this four-paneled fading design. When one passes through Zurashi's slipped, they are met with several hidden gems from Ricketts' current experimental series, Unbound. This series is inspired by historic American textiles, the first being simple checks, plaids, and stars found in an 18th century pattern book. Looking closely, this American imagery was crafted by interweaving cotton, grown by enslaved people and spun in northeastern mills, with local wools steeped in the indigo, madder, cochineal, and Brazil wood of global colonialism. Two of these combinations, indigo and cotton, still create an American staple, the blue jean. Ricketts believes the material content of these textiles speaks much more directly to our nation's history than the visual stories they tell. Unbound Series 2 Number 1 features various shades of blue, red, and white woven to form stripes and an overlay of stars in the center. Selections of the weaving have been faded, revealing the faint outline of the American flag, fittingly named the Stars and Stripes. This ghost image is seen by the artist as a memory of the dyeing and weaving process, which naturally loses color if not treated, and more symbolically as a haunting by the patterns of our history well after their time. Viewers may also notice that there is an empty frame to the right of this piece. This was accidental at first, but the artist felt an overwhelming sense of sadness looking at the finished weaving next to the empty space, similar to how some frontier towns are now abandoned. It is a reminder of what was. In his more recent series, Ricketts is inspired by 19th century American coverlets, or bed covers, first seen by the artist in a Bloomington, Indiana antique store. In addition to many specifically being made in Indiana, Ricketts believes coverlets are both an embodiment and expression of our national identity. Also in red, white, and blue, like the 18th century textiles, these weavings visualize the young nation through emblems of state and the Stars and Stripes of independence, ironically still created using the labor of enslaved people. Here in Favorite Objects with Everyday People, an eagle and shield is displayed upside down amidst a cloud of binary code, emitted from factory smokestacks. Ricketts was inspired by the parallels between 1820 and today in regard to the communications revolution. He states, "In our attention economy, binary code is the pollution of our day, turning our attention away from the everydayness of our neighbors and communities. The eagle is upside down because it has been choked in the toxic fumes." The final piece, titled Eagles and Stars, is a sort of bridge between the older plaid textiles and 19th century coverlets. It retains the faded cotton and indigo of Unbound Series 2 Number 1, with the same symbolism, but is larger in scale and has more elaborate, although abstracted imagery, as in the coverlet. It would have resembled Favorite Objects with Everyday People, but it has been faded for 6 months and carefully unthreaded so that only the ground is visible. In addition, Ricketts has used linen paper yarn in this example, which, for practicality, fades easier, but is also symbolic of how the technology of industrial paper production in the 19th century enabled the creation and global expansion of future markets, which in turn drove cotton production and therefore slavery. The degradation of the textile also can be seen as a further example of the weathering of history. Thank you for joining me for this virtual Curators tour. If you would like to experience Ricketts' immersive work in person, we encourage you to see Rowland Ricketts' Invisible Forces before it closes on September 1st.